Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Access Asia. Coming up, dying to get rich. The illegal gold trade is booming in the Philippines, but poor villagers working in the mines are not reaping the profits. Uzbekistan reaps what it sows. One of the world's biggest cotton producers has trouble cracking down on forced labor in the fields. And rising waters in the Indian Bay of Bengal are shrinking islands and threatening residents. Scientists blame climate change. Well, it's an industry said to be worth hundreds of millions of euros, the illegal gold trade in the Philippines. But not everyone is reaping the profits. Every day, poor men, women, and children risk their lives in the mines, lured by stories of getting rich, but the reality is far, far different. Luke Shrego reports.
Bent double and disappearing into the darkness for dozens, sometimes hundreds of meters underground. These are the Philippines' illegal gold miners. Deborah and her husband often spend up to 8 hours a day in the gloom, something they've done for 13 years. It can be extremely dangerous. After just 10 minutes, rocks begin falling from the crumbling walls.
It looks like the stones are already very, what do we call that? They are loosened. That's why it's very dangerous. It might get down.
Accidents are a common occurrence, but few will talk about them for fear of attracting bad fortune. Hundreds of illegal mines like this one honeycomb the northern Philippines' mountainous terrain. Underexploited, it's thought to be the second largest gold deposit in the world. Mining is generally a man's job, but over generations, women here have dug out a place for themselves. For some, it's a family business, like 64 Avlina, her 14-year-old daughter, and her aunt of 82.
I never went to school, so all I know is how to work the mines and plant vegetables. Life is very hard here, and the mines are the best way of supporting yourself.
Of millions of the Philippines' poor, those in the region see the mines as a way out of crushing poverty. The next stage is treating the material brought to the surface, rinsing repeatedly until the residue can be heated, until a dark nugget like this appears. It's 0.5 milligram of gold.
It's not great. It's too small for all the effort we went to.
No matter how much they retrieve, there are always offices like this, which are happy to pay for whatever people bring them. This time they've done well, more than usual at 1.3 grams.
1, 2, 3. Worth 3,000. I'll be going in the market to buy the food for us for maybe 1 week, 2 weeks. Yeah, I'm very happy because I only earned this for only 2 weeks.
Throughout the northern Philippines hills, tens of thousands of women scratch out their mines below ground in the hopes of hitting the motherlode and providing long-term for their families' needs.
Well, for about a decade now, hundreds of Western firms have boycotted cotton from one of the world's largest producers, Uzbekistan. The reason is because the country is accused of using one of the largest state-orchestrated systems of forced labor to exploit the crop. But recently, the government has changed some of its labor policies. Charlie James has more.
Cotton as far as the eye can see, a common sight in Uzbekistan. Each autumn, more than 2 million people spend weeks laboring in the nation's fields. And this year, harvest workers' wages have been increased by 15%, one of a series of reforms trying to clean up the state-run industry.
This money will boost our family budget. Most importantly, I've earned enough money to buy a washing machine.
Cotton is very important to the nation's economy, but it has a dark side. Forced labor and child recruitment have long been a problem in the industry. An international boycott pressured the state to end child labor practices earlier this decade. Now the government is increasing fines and introducing legislation to criminalize forced labor. The United Nations says 170,000 people were forced to harvest cotton last year, down from nearly 1 million in 2016. However, politicians admit ending the practice won't happen overnight.
It began even before Soviet period. We have widespread cases of forced labor in the cotton field. So it's not easy for several years totally get rid of forced labor in cotton harvest.
This year, the United States removed Uzbek cotton from a list of prohibited goods, saying child labor has become very rare. Still, forced labor concerns have kept hundreds of companies, including Adidas and Walmart, from lifting their own boycotts. And it's a regional issue. Last year, Washington imposed a cotton ban on Uzbekistan's neighbor, Turkmenistan, which has also faced criticism over forced and child labor.
To India now, where rising temperatures are creating an environmental catastrophe. As melting snow rushes down from the Himalayas, islands in India's Bay of Bengal slowly sink. Their water salinity is also changing the soil, making farming more difficult. Here's a story with Catherine Viette.
This is the Bay of Bengal. Thanks to rising waters, parts of it now cover once inhabited islands like Loa Chara. Paratosh Giri and Surav Bara work for an environmental NGO. They are out in the bay trying to locate the submerged island.
There used to be a levee all around the island, and the people would farm the land and grow rice. But little by little, everything was destroyed. The embankments were washed away, and the island was inundated from all sides. Residents had no choice but to leave, some of whom were born here. Everything was lost.
On these satellite images, it's possible to see the island's location. It officially disappeared in 2010. Scientists say Himalaya's melting glaciers are one of the reasons for the rising water levels. These environmentalists also blame climate change.
Nature's cycles have changed. Everything is out of whack, and now the cyclones are much stronger and also more frequent.
So far, 4 islands have disappeared. Several others are in danger of sinking. That's the case with Goramara. It's already lost half of its landmass. The post office and the market were swallowed up. These fishermen are among the last to live on the island.
Those who had money saved up, they've left. It's only poor people like us who stay here.
But do you have enough food on this island to survive?
No. How can we grow anything here? Just look around. There's water everywhere. When the sea level rises, we have to flee with our children in the middle of the night.
A few kilometers away, it's the same tragic story. Another town that succumbed to the sea. The remains of a few buildings dot the landscape. 250 families were forced from their homes. For the past 4 years, this man and his family have lived at the mercy of the rising tides.
This house is falling apart, but this is a new house, and the water comes up to the waist when there's a high tide on the full moon.
He'll most likely end up losing everything, becoming a climate change refugee. For him, the cause is clear.
We've polluted our planet, using all this plastic and oil that gets poured into the oceans. There's hardly any fish left. The environment's wrecked. We've cut down the trees through sheer greed. We've abused our natural resources. We're responsible for what's happened. Man is responsible and no one else.
The shores along the Bay of Bengal are home to around 4 million people. The rising tides will force many to relocate.
Well, thousands of small palaces are in danger of falling into ruin in India. The structures, known as Havelis, lie along the Old Spice route in Rajasthan. Alan Gainsford reports on how a group of passionate volunteers and entrepreneurs are working to restore some of the buildings.
In the heart of Rajasthan, there are many forgotten treasures. Here, along the old Silk Route, hundreds of abandoned palaces are gradually falling into ruin. But this building is an exception. Taken over by French owners 20 years ago, its exterior has now been completely restored. While inside, it's now a hotel. There are daily guided tours for tourists. The main part of the palace was built in the 19th century. It was originally owned by wealthy spice merchants. It's also richly decorated inside, with paintings and frescoes, showing religious acts and scenes from everyday life.
At the time, paintings were a way to show how rich you were, as the techniques were quite expensive. It was the best way to attract the attention of passing merchants. It was magnificent.
The palace was abandoned for over 200 years. Its new owners are overseeing the restoration, carried out by a mixture of experienced restorers and volunteers from all over the world. They're all working for free, sharing their knowledge and techniques.
In this scene I'm cleaning the blue, because the blue of this painting is the part that has been best preserved. The painting is really wonderful. I'm cleaning it with a brush. A surface like this will take at least an hour.
Old things have a lot of value as they hold our history. If we forget our past, there won't be a future.
Alexandre Monod has dedicated himself to saving this monument.
This was 20 years ago, so you can see there's not a lot left. After restoration, it's beautiful again, back to its former glory.
It was a colossal job, and it's not over yet.
With the monsoon and the sun that beat down all the time on the walls, it means as soon as you finish one, you have to start another. It takes up all our time. It takes over our lives. It's a labor of love.
The success of this project has inspired others in the area. More of these palaces are being converted into hotels, where visitors from around the world can spend a night and imagine themselves as rich merchants traveling along the spice route.
Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching, and please stay tuned to France 24.